are live. Colby Hall joins me now from Mediaite. I read everything that he writes, and I'm very happy when I get to talk to you. You've written a lot in the last week or so. A lot has happened. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's been, there's never shortage of crazy bullshit to talk about and write about. So, thank you for saying that. It's a nutty time, to say the least.
A lot of things get buried and we forget about them. I like the idea that a week after, or even a couple days after in this news cycle, you can unpack something that's important to understand its impact and then kind of have a perspective on why it means, which is why I wanted to start with talking about what happened last week. I guess it were a few days ago, really, when ABC News Terry Moran put out a post on social media, highly critical of Stephen Miller. Said some pretty specific, terrible things about the man's character or lack thereof. People probably read it. You have a piece at Mediaite titled "The Fake Outrage at ABC's Terry Moran Exposes How Dishonest Independent Media Can Be." Give me the summary here, the angle. I think this is an important issue to talk about.
Well, so I opened that piece by saying Terry Moran made a mistake by using really flowery language to say basically that Stephen Miller, his soul is nourished by hate, which is floral language for someone who's a traditional journalist, right? I think Stephen Miller probably is delighted by that because he loves playing the villain. And I don't think the mistake necessarily was Terry Moran being so kind of candid in his analysis. I think his mistake was that he borrowed a lot of trouble for his corporate media employer, who was forced into a corner and had to suspend him and under further review. The larger point that I made, though, was that there was this outrage, this pearl clutching by all these mostly right-wing commentators who saw that as their own confirmation bias that, broadcast journalists are biased. And the thought occurred to me that, there's such a different standard. I get, yes, that there are opinion people, there's columnists, and they have the freedom to say whatever they want under the auspice of analysis. And journalists are supposed to be fact-based, truth-based, sort of arbiters. And, I think in a subjective postmodern world, those lines, those rules don't apply any longer. And it's infuriating that someone like Megyn Kelly, whose stock and trade is to basically say things that you're not supposed to say. She's very pro-Trump, very opinionated. She's the one that's calling for Terry Moran to be fired. And it's like she's playing the referee in a game, the rules of which she doesn't even abide by, right? I get that journalism was always supposed to be this pure reservoir of facts and truth. And, right now it's being polluted by toxic sewage from extremists on both sides. But in this instance, it's mostly people on the right. And I just feel like this weird bizarre line of, what people can say and not say is outdated. It no longer makes sense. And also, by the way, journalists are losing the lucrative battle. It's not a business model that works anymore because no one wants to hear the facts. They just want the hot take. So I just felt that it was bizarre, and it really angered me that Terry Moran, who I don't know, and I don't even think he's that liberal. I think he's pretty libertarian, to be honest, was being called to be fired because he made a pretty, dumb but small mistake.
I love the way that you wrote this at Mediaite. You said Moran got slapped down for violating journalistic standards of objectivity. Fair enough. There are journalists out there with thoughtful criticisms of his post who maintain good reputations for honesty themselves. But the most vocal critics of this tweet are people who have zero standards. They're not journalists. They're avatars, brands, outrage entrepreneurs. Their stock and trade is pumping out commentary far more unhinged than what Moran said without ever risking suspension, because no one can suspend you when you are your own boss. And I think that resonated with me. That's because that's where we're at. You go on to say something more, I think, really important points where you say this asymmetry is the core of the problem. Journalists are held to impossibly high standards of accountability, while the real drivers of disinformation and public rage skate by unchecked. The more, quote, independent media becomes, be it YouTube screamers, Substack polemicists, or social media flamethrowers, the more neutered traditional journalism looks by comparison, and the more public, understandably, tunes out the public. So great. We live in a time when ratings reward rage, and legacy outlets are increasingly viewed as both compromised and toothless. The people still trying to tell the truth are left hemmed in by the rules that were written for another era, on another platform, for another kind of audience. Those three kind of paragraphs right there more succinctly frame what has gone on with media in this transition than anything else. I don't know if anybody really cares, but I am so glad that you wrote that.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's frustrating. And I've never really called myself a journalist because I don't abide by those standards, right? I think there's something really capital J sort of journalistic school. I guess I act like one, but I don't. I think Sean Hannity is always journalism is dead, and he says that as a dig because he thinks that sort of everyone's biased. But I do believe, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but there was a time in my youth coming out of college where semiotics and deconstructionism was all like the rage, where meaning was ephemeral. Everyone had their own personal meaning. And I think now 50, 60 years later after, it's true. Like if we can't agree on truth and facts, then journalism will forever lose to the outrage merchants who appeal to the, what is it? The part of your brain that is anger, the amygdala, like that.
That is the thing, though. I mean, you had a couple fun little nicknames for it and words for it, but I don't know. I can never. That's why I always feel like it's so impossible to not compromise my own kind of values and like pumping out little clips with outrageous Pete Dominick destroys Colby Hall because he didn't get dressed up for his live YouTube. Like that'll get people to watch.
Right. Honestly, like this is what we do at Mediaite. So I do say that we are part of the problem, although we try to do it responsibly. I mean, it was clear, for example, like the cheap fake debate, right? Like it's being held up as a cudgel by the right, like, oh, you made fun of cheap fakes. Well, no, actually, it was clear to anyone that Trump, or rather Biden, was he was old, he was stiffening. But those clips were mischaracterized unfairly. Like you didn't need to mischaracterize them, right? So it's tough to have a nuanced conversation about disinformation when, yeah, he's old. We should be having this conversation about how he shouldn't be running for office, and he looks confused often. But also, if he's walking towards paratroopers that just landed next to him off camera, you can't say that he wandered off because he didn't know where he was. Well, no, actually, he did know where he was. And so both of those things can be true. And unfortunately, we live in a, zazzy headline, grab your attention world that there's no room for nuance in this sort of, grab you by the lapels and like, this is the thing that happened and this is why you should be outraged or make fun of this thing that isn't entirely true.
You wrote a piece, "The Government We Deserve, Trump and Musk's Ugly Split is a perfect reflection of the current state of America." I mean, I really want to ask you and everybody else about this. And it's crazy because you've, written 5 pieces since, a few on what's happening in Los Angeles, of course. But, at the end of last week, we all stopped whatever we were doing, no matter what we were doing, to go to Twitter, even if you didn't have it anymore, and see what Elon Musk was about to say next. He nuked Trump with the Epstein tweet, and it got uglier from there. Talk to me about this piece and your thoughts just a few days later of what the big bad breakup over the big bad bill all means.
Well, I think I opened with something that I tell my kids, and that is play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? And the stupid game America played is we elected to powers of position, megalomaniacal, thin-skinned assholes and who are unserious. And the prize that we win is a government that's run by unserious, thin-skinned attention whores, right? Are we not entertained? Like I was fascinated, like, oh my God, Trump, Elon Musk said what? And I had a lot of smart friends who thought, like, is this real? Is this just political theater? And I'm like, yeah, of course it's real. I don't think this is kayfabe. However, in a week's time, we could learn that they're having, makeup dinner at Mar-a-Lago because, nothing's real. Like nothing matters. But it reminded me of a sort of famous book by Neil Postman, Amusing Ourselves to Death, who basically said that when we treat news as entertainment, it treat news as content. It shows sort of a greater social decay, and that's precisely where we are. Like, again, self-awareness time. Mediaite plays in this game a lot, and I'm fascinated by it. But you elect buffoons who, their sort of most informative experience was participating in pro wrestling. You get a president who acts like a pro wrestler and talks shit, and you get a media ecosystem and an audience that sucks it up, right? And it's that famous, I don't know if it's really Thomas Jefferson, he said this, but people get the government they deserve. This is the government we deserve right now. Like, this isn't, this is who we are, right? And I don't think anyone is stepping back and saying, holy shit, we've lost the plot. Like, there are smart people who are outraged who can't believe this, but they're kind of old fuddy-duddies who are living in the past. Like, this is the net effect of social media and reality TV and political theater that's all about trash talking and has zero focus or attention or priority to governance. And those who do prioritize governance, they don't get reelected because they're not playing this game, or they're losing this game terribly. Look at the Democrats. They're in a mess, right? They're in disarray, proverbially, because they're trying to govern and they're not doing the game that is,
they can't play the game.
Terrible places.
I've argued that Democrats and progressive thinkers can't play the same game and should not be compared. It doesn't work. If you do the things that Republicans do, progressives won't like it. They'll be turned off by it. Those tactics and techniques don't work amongst a real pluralistic, ethically diverse group of people. And they do work with, a lot of Christian nationalists in red states.
David Pakman, I heard him do an interview on the media, which is left-leaning, but it's really smart. And David Pakman, who's this sort of progressive YouTube personality, he's had great success. He summed it up really well. He's like, given sort of the abortion rights, choice, reproductive rights debate, the argument on the right is, 3 words. It's like, life begins at conception, right? Like, that's 4 words, right? The progressive rights-based position is, well, it's a nuanced discussion based on these variables. And, like, the Democratic Party, to your point, is always trying to take a very situational, nuanced, and well-informed approach to these very complicated, complex issues. Yeah. And it's sadly why they often lose to the oversimplified sloganeering that, wants to make America great again. Like, who doesn't want America to be great again?
No, that's a good example. I feel like the other examples that have really illustrated this in our last couple of years have been COVID in general and like trans anything. It's before once they say whatever they say about a trans kid, like, you don't even get to say how you feel about it, because in that case, that conversation's already over. I mean, we don't even get to. It's wild to watch it play out on our school board and try to react to it with, I guess you could call it nuance. I would just say a couple more words or say it a little bit differently. I'm not worried. I forget what, the most effective slogan. You could say just about anything anti-trans, I said. But my response was, my daughters are not worried about trans girls in the bathroom. They're worried for them. Right. Pretty simple. Makes sense, like, to people, but didn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. We are having a different conversation, right, which, as you just said, is so I just don't think we can do it. We can't win on these points, and our media is wildly different too. I mean, Trump last week said that Joe Biden had retweeted somebody that said Joe Biden had died and was a droid, and it barely made, like, if a Democrat did that or anything remotely like that, I mean, they wouldn't be taken.
Well, Pete Hegseth was in the hearings today, and his Signalgate thing, where he clearly shared top secret information about an attack on an enemy, on an unsecure environment before the attack was made, that put our soldiers at risk. Had that happened under the Biden administration, it would we would never have heard the end of it. And I don't even know that it came up in the hearings today, at least that which I saw. And, part of it is we have very short attention spans. We get distracted by this, but I think the distractions, it's all, and again, this is where I have to look at the man in the mirror, to quote Michael Jackson, because I feel like, playing a lead role in Mediaite, we fall for the distractions, and it's a really tough editorial conversation, like crazy shit that Trump says. You can't ignore it, but if it's just a fire hose, at what point? I mean, I like to think the pendulum will swing the other way, but I don't see yet how this course corrects. It seems like we're still really early in the bad part.
You have a really good take on just that at Mediaite. Trump's National Guard stunt in LA is pure political theater, and the media can't look away. Of course they can't. It's a car chase. It's a plane crashing. It's people in the streets fighting with police. That will always be imminently, getting ratings. It was great to watch Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC last night, though, call that out and go to a couple of undercovered, more important issues and do it in a way that I don't know what it means for his ratings, but most people can't do that. And this is, as you say, made for TV. But what is TV supposed to do other than send reporters to get shot by rubber bullets? How many reporters have been shot now?
Not enough. No, I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the movie September 5? Do you know?
Yeah, I just watched it.
Loved it. I saw it, and it just what I loved about it. It was a procedural. It was a journalistic procedural, but they were literally like sort of uncovering. You could see these individuals having thought bubbles about major journalistic ethical issues that we still struggle with today. And I was watching the riots, protests, whatever on CNN, and nothing was really happening, right? And it occurred to me that having these cameras and reporters on these protesters and cops / guardsmen, it was like the Heidegger principle, like the thing that you observing the thing changes the nature of the thing that you're observing, right? So, and in this instance, almost every participant can claim some sort of principled position. Even the Trump administration can say, like, look, violent riots are not good and we want law and order. Like, I think they're instigating, but the protesters have a good point. The reporters have to cover it. And yet we're in this sort of, it's created this death spiral where we're just like, this political theater is making matters worse. Like, none of this, and even the trash talking between Newsom, who I think is good to push back, but like that's escalating to a degree that it almost loses the larger issue. It's not the riots, it's this authoritarian play that seems to be getting less discussion and is a much greater concern. Newsom's bringing that up, than this sort of like, if it bleeds, it leads conflict between, rubber bullets from National Guardsmen towards reporters.
The reason why I think that that's almost a moot point is because in this case, cameras and journalists should be covering it as much as possible, because you have a president who is lying about the facts on the ground in the most exaggerated, dishonest ways. He did this when he was president the last time at the George Floyd. Portland is burning down. I mean, LA, anybody that is there, I mean, everybody that is there, it's a huge place, is saying, showing images of beautiful LA, peaceful LA, whatever, because this is really contained to just a couple of blocks around federal buildings specifically. And so you need cameras to cover, to contradict what Trump is saying. And by the way, even if, he doesn't stop lying, people are now, it's so confusing. I got duped at one point. People are showing images of, other places in the world at different times, Iraq in 2003, or Minnesota in 2020, and it's not LA, and people get misled. Ted Cruz, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, tweeted a picture from the 2020 riots. It was not from LA.
I don't think it was on purpose, but I don't think he cares, right? Because there's a dearth of critical thinking that are going to question that sort of stuff. But as an example of this, I think news outlets are correctly saying that this is mostly peaceful protests. But that doesn't preclude the fact that there are violence and there are riots and really bad things, looting that's happening, and that doesn't excuse that. But, just because there's, a peaceful protester, it shouldn't be called a rioter because of the actions of someone else that happened like 2 miles away.
So you just said
there's a spectrum, and there's all these different examples. The media tends to cherry pick the examples that they want to prove their point, and that's an issue across the spectrum. I think the conservative side plays a little bit looser and faster, and as a result, get better ratings.
I mean, I don't. You said riots and looters. I don't think you could consider anything that I've seen riots. I don't know if there's been any reported of looting. If anything, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if anything, I feel like what we're seeing is the more police you put in the street, the more people are going to show up to try to protest them or to throw water bottles or whatever at them. They're drawing people out, and it looks to be on purpose. But I mean, whether it's police that could definitely be handling this on their own, much less the National Guard, which the governor didn't request, or now the Marines, like for what? People are mad just by the fact that the National Guard is patrolling our streets. We don't like that. Americans don't like fatigues on the streets, even when cops dress up with their
who else doesn't like that? The military doesn't like to be on the street. Like, that's the last place that they want to be. And this is clearly a strong arm play. I would say, to your point also, I agree that the addition of National Guard has escalated things. The point that I was trying to make in that piece that you mentioned is that the media presence, while necessary, also serves not as a cause of conflict, but a catalyst, right? Because I think, by reporting on it, it kind of makes it a bigger deal. And, there's a lot of people who watch a lot of TV. It's like, oh, that crazy thing is happening a block away. Let's go check it out. And so it tends to bring it. And I don't think that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just a thing, and that we should recognize phenomenon, even if it doesn't suit our narrative. It's just a thing. And I don't know that there's an easy solution. It would be great if grownups were in charge and decided to get away from the conflict, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
It's very hard. I feel it's hard to cover as journalists or as follow as the public, because I could just think of, and you could, so many off the cuff things that simply didn't happen. And they weren't like a grain of truth. They didn't happen. Like they're eating cats and dogs, or that the city is on fire, or that any number of things that he says, that the National Guard came in and thanks to me, and they fixed everything when you rightly documented.
The city burned down. He said today the city would have burned down if not for him. Like, dude, like, I get that that's political hyperbole, but to your point, it's so baseless and so bereft of any facts or truth that it debases the national discourse. And the discourse has already been debased, right? Like, so, and again, if you have a guy that doesn't abide by sort of standard accepted rules of engagement or even social contract, I wrote in a column a long time ago about, I think it was Tucker Carlson, like, you'll never win a debate with someone who's willing to lie through their teeth.
Right.
And that's why you can never, no matter what happens with the tariffs or LA or whatever issue, Trump will always claim that he won, even if it's just obviously clearly bullshit, right? And so you can't have a meaningful dialogue with someone who's just, doesn't abide by the truth.
What do you make of Gavin Newsom's reaction and his kind of strategy? He's talking to everybody from local LA to the biggest YouTube to the networks. And I'd never seen him like this. I mean, he's an emotional guy. He's very performative. He's very articulate, but I mean, he's like, come on, arrest me. He's talking tough. He's seems like a tough guy. He seems like the right guy for the moment. What do you think, though? I fall for him. I do a little bit fall for him.
I do too. Like, I mean, there's part of me, there's a skeptical part of me that sort of loathes anyone that's so camera ready and strong jawed and ready for this. But I think at the end of the day, I net out that he's rising.
I get that. But that's the job.
No, right. And I mean, look, he's the starting quarterback of the Democrat Party in the California, state of California. I think like, time will tell, but my reaction initially is that he's pushing back. He's showing strength and he's calling bullshit, and he's saying, okay, do that thing that you're saying. Like, he's not rolling over. And I think that's they're in this much the same way Cory Booker, who's similar, I think, he's like sort of the East Coast equivalent, because there's a little bit of like, enjoying the moment, performative, like, never get between Gavin Newsom and a microphone. But I think he's rising to the occasion. I think he's saying and doing the right stuff, because people need to push back and hang a lantern on the fact that what the federal government is doing right now is really scary. It is a slippery slope. And if you just roll over and say like, okay, that's fine. Is he doing this as part of political ambitions? Maybe, but I think it's also, to his credit, a principled one. And it's a pretty easy principled position to take. So I think he's got some other issues. I think California is kind of a shit show that he should probably help try to clean up. But so far, I think he's been a good foil for Trump's crazy in this latest episode. But, talk to me in a week and we'll be talking about some other insane story.
One thing we might be talking about, and I'll let you go on this because, it's coming up this weekend. It's the president's birthday. It's like the 250th anniversary. It is the major protests plan, No King's Day. Yeah. The Pope is going to be apparently giving a big speech. So, like, I don't know what you're going to be doing this weekend. I'm guessing you're going to have to cover all of this. But what do you make just simply of the military parade and, the kind of coverage it will get or not get? That imagery, I'm pretty caught up on that. Regular listeners and people, but I've been talking about this the past few days. I feel like that's I don't know who it's bad for. I don't know who it affects, but I don't think Americans, not only do we not like, uniformed military in the streets on patrol, we definitely were raised on movies and images from around the world, from China to Russia, Soviet Union to North Korea, of this type of military parade. I mean, they're going to have fucking tanks. And I was joking last night with listeners. I wonder if they'll have missiles. And then I read today, yeah, there's going to be missiles. Like missiles?
I think it could be really explosive. I kind of hope that it is. I mean, honestly, like, we need a national movement. Like we need, I don't know if it's like when even David Brooks is writing in the New York Times a couple months ago that we need like a national strike. David Brooks, good for him. But it's not clear that anything has been effective. And, Rachel did a big thing on it last night's show. I hope that it becomes a peaceful thing. Trump already sort of threatened like any protest of the military will be a very big force. It could blow up, but you're right. I think it's a 70-30 issue. I think 70% of Americans will be like, this is what we see in the Kremlin. This is what we see in Tiananmen Square. This is not who we are. There's 30% of Americans who are kind of miss the whole we're a democracy portion of, social studies in school and just simply like that we look strong. And that's, I think, the concerning part, right? So I think it's going to be a big weekend. I hope it's peaceful. I think Trump's painting himself into this corner. Will it work out for him? Yeah. I don't, the walls have been closing in on this dude forever. So much that they're not really closing in. So, the reports of his death or political death are exaggerated.
You're absolutely right. It was amazing, though, and just the Schadenfreude of him stumbling up those stairs. Just,
I mean, but he's an old dude. He's 79. Like,
Marco Rubio also stumbled up the stairs, and people stumble on the stairs.
I've never stumbled on the stairs. I don't know what you're talking about. People make mistakes. Like this. Nobody's perfect, as Ziggy taught me when I was a kid. So. Yeah, it's it does feel like, this administration is seeing their poll numbers shift and they are looking for things to distract us with. And, the honeymoon is over, I think. And, hopefully we can get through this in a way that doesn't do serious damage.
Well, we'll see. If that bill passes, it's going to be some very serious damage to people's lives. But we'll talk about that soon, because that's going to happen within the next few weeks, potentially. We'll see what happens. Colby Hall writes great things, interesting things, thoughtful things at Mediaite. If you're not following him on all the social medias and reading Mediaite, you're missing out. I go there every day and read your stuff.
I appreciate you saying nice words. I'll pay you the $20 later.
I would just like to meet you in person and have a drink. We've been talking for a couple of years now. We've never actually met, so we should
I'm
do
down.
that.
Well, we have some of the same people in common. I saw you on an old CNN clip that randomly came up on my feed. I was like, well, there's Pete. So it was good to see.
That must have been a while ago. They haven't invited me back. I was the farm team. I was the experimental part of the panel for that Abby show. I've known Abby and for that CNN show, and they were having, less credible people like myself on, to be fair. I mean, they still have a lot of hacks and less credible, but now it's like
a hot show right now, which is, I mean, it's compelling TV, but it's a return of Crossfire, right? And it's compelling because you hear different voices, but it's also often political theater. It's not real discourse, it's fights.
Yeah. Do you know that it gets like good ratings or better ratings than other shows?
Yeah, it's kind of the outlier of CNN's ratings trends right now. It's the one show that's sort of like trending upwards, which it speaks volumes of. And I actually think it suits Abby really well because she's so calm. When she was hosting her own show, that calmness didn't necessarily convey. But in that crazy over the top environment, it brings out her strengths in a really good way because she's great. She's really smart, and she's a calming presence for Touré and Scott Jennings to come to blows.
Yeah. Thanks, bud. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon, and we will meet up soon. Thank you very much for doing this.
Good stuff.
And thanks everybody for stopping by. And that's it. We're out.